Welcome to Risk Related by Granite. So I'm curious, what does Granite's State of Risk Management report say about what makes good risk management? Like, what sets those organizations apart?
Well, they highlight some key elements that really, they resonate with what we know about effective risk management practices.
Okay.
First and foremost, good risk management is systematic.
Okay.
And it's integrated into the daily operations.
Okay, so it's not something you just do once a year and then forget about?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's about embedding risk awareness into the DNA of the organization.
Got it. So how important is leadership in all of this?
Oh, leadership is absolutely crucial.
Okay.
I mean, without their buy-in and participation, even the most, well-designed risk management system's probably going to fail.
Right.
Leaders set the tone.
Mm-hmm.
They demonstrate that risk management is, valued.
Yeah, so it's not just like one person's job, it's everyone's responsibility.
Exactly. And I think one of the really compelling points that Granite makes in this report is that good risk management actually helps organizations make better decisions.
Okay, yeah.
It's not just about, avoiding negative outcomes.
Okay.
It's about providing that information and insights needed to make good choices.
That makes sense.
And, to that end, the report highlights how good risk management helps organizations cut through those silos and focus on the most critical risks.
Okay.
The ones that could really impact their success.
So it's about clarity and focus, I guess.
Yeah.
You can't manage every single possible risk.
Of course not, no. You've got to identify the ones that really matter.
Yeah. So then that leads us to the different approaches, I guess, to managing those risks, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So what are we talking about there?
So they discuss three main types: operational, enterprise, which is ERM, and strategic.
Okay.
And each one has, a different scope and time frame.
Okay, so let's break those down, I guess. First up, operational.
Mm-hmm.
That seems pretty straightforward. It's like your day-to-day risks that need quick responses.
Exactly. Yeah. Think of it as like the tactical level.
Yeah.
You're dealing with threats and uncertainties that could disrupt your current operations.
Right.
So you need that rapid response to keep things running.
Got it. So if that's like keeping the lights on, what about ERM? Where does that fit in?
So ERM takes a bit of a wider lens.
Okay.
And it's considering risks that could affect the entire business, over the medium term.
Okay.
So you're kind of looking at those potential challenges or even opportunities that could impact multiple departments.
Okay. So it's like seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a more holistic approach.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got the tactical level, and then we've got this more strategic level. Yep. What about the third one, strategic risk management? What's that all about?
So strategic takes the longest term view, right? And it focuses on the big picture risks, the ones that could impact your overall strategy and goals.
Okay. So these are things that could, fundamentally change the game for the company.
Exactly.
Like major disruptions or something like that.
Yeah. Those are the risks that could make or break you in the long run.
Yeah. So the goal with that is to just see those coming way ahead of time, right?
Exactly. So that you can adapt and change your strategy to kind of stay ahead of the curve.
That's fascinating. So we have these three approaches. They're all kind of focused on different timelines, and different levels of impact.
Yeah.
But how do organizations figure out where they stand, I guess, in all this?
That's where the risk management maturity model comes in, or, RMM.
Okay.
So it's kind of a way of understanding your journey.
Okay.
That organizations kind of evolve in how they approach risk.
Got it. So it's not like a pass-fail. It's more like you're always kind of moving along.
Exactly. Yeah. It helps you figure out your strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
And identify areas where you can improve.
I like that.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that, the RMM. How does it work?
Okay. So it outlines 5 maturity levels.
Okay.
Each with its own characteristics.
Okay.
It starts with what they call ad hoc, which is the most basic reactive approach.
Okay.
And then it goes all the way up to optimizing, which is the most mature.
Okay. So let's dive into those a little bit. What does ad hoc actually look like?
Okay. So ad hoc is basically when you only think about risk management when you absolutely have to.
Okay. So when something bad happens.
Right. Like a crisis hits or you've got an audit coming up.
Right. Right.
And it's very reactive, inconsistent. There's not really a system in place.
So it's just a lot of scrambling.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, and then what about the next level up? Repeatable. What's different there?
So with repeatable, You start to see some documented processes.
Okay.
Maybe some checklists or templates that they use,
Okay.
but it's still not systematic, not fully integrated.
Got it. So they're trying, but they're not quite there yet.
Exactly.
What does it take to get to the next level defined?
So with defined, things start to get a bit more formalized.
Okay.
You might see, dedicated risk management functions emerging.
Mm-hmm.
They start developing more structured approaches to things.
Okay, but are there still silos at this point?
Yeah, you still see some silos.
Okay.
Risk assessments might be done regularly, but the results might not be used to inform decision-making.
Okay, so they're getting more sophisticated, but there's still some work to do.
Exactly, yeah.
What about managed? What sets that apart?
Managed is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because at this level, risk management is truly integrated into the operations and the culture.
So it's not just a separate thing anymore. It's actually how they do business.
Exactly.
Okay.
So people are aware of the risks. They talk about them openly.
Mm-hmm.
They consider risks when they're making decisions.
So it becomes part of the company DNA almost.
Exactly.
Okay. So managed is like integration and being more proactive.
Mm-hmm.
What about that final level, optimizing? What does it mean to reach the top?
Okay, so optimizing is where it actually becomes a competitive advantage.
Wow.
So they don't just manage risk, they actually leverage it.
Okay.
They understand their appetite for risk. They seek out opportunities.
So it's not just about mitigating risk, it's about actually using it
Exactly.
to your advantage.
Yeah. It's about moving beyond just being defensive and using risk to actually drive innovation and growth.
I love that.
Yeah.
So we've got these 5 levels. They all represent different stages in that journey.
Mm-hmm.
But how do companies actually figure out where they fall on this maturity scale?
Well, the webinar highlights 7 key areas to focus on.
Okay.
These areas can help you pinpoint your strengths and weaknesses
Okay.
and kind of guide your improvement efforts.
Okay, well, let's get into those. What's the first one?
So the first one focuses on ERM adoption.
Okay.
How well is it integrated across the different departments? And also, is leadership supporting and participating?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because if the leaders aren't on board, I feel like it's probably not going to happen.
Exactly. They have to be actively involved.
Okay, what's the next area?
The second area is all about risk identification.
Okay, so going beyond the obvious, I guess.
Yeah, it's about considering the full range of risks that could potentially impact the organization.
Okay.
And this might involve different methods like brainstorming workshops, scenario planning, even data analysis techniques.
Yeah, so you're trying to look at it from every possible angle.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, so that's ERM, adoption, risk identification. What's next?
The third area is all about process management. So is risk management integrated into your existing processes?
Right.
Or is it, separate, a siloed activity?
Right, yeah. So ideally, it's part of how you do everything.
Exactly.
Okay. What about the fourth area?
So the fourth area focuses on risk appetite management.
Okay. Now, that one's always kind of confused me. Can you break that down a little bit?
Sure. So risk appetite is basically the amount of risk that an organization is willing to accept, to achieve its goals.
Okay.
So it's like understanding your comfort level.
Got it. So some companies might be more willing to take risks than others.
Exactly. Yeah. And defining your risk appetite is crucial for aligning everyone's decision-making.
Right. That makes sense. So assessing this area is about how well they've defined that and whether they actually use it. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked about ERM adoption, risk identification, process management, and risk appetite management. What else do we need to consider?
Okay. So the fifth area is all about root cause analysis. And this is about learning from past mistakes, right?
Okay. So not just putting out the fire, but figuring out why it started.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So do they just treat the symptoms or do they actually try to dig deeper and understand the underlying issues?
Got it. So it's a much more proactive approach.
Exactly. And by doing that, they can implement better corrective actions, strengthen their risk management capabilities.
So they're less likely to make the same mistake again.
Exactly.
Okay. So root cause analysis. Why did things happen? What's the next area?
Okay, so the sixth area is all about business resilience.
Okay.
So how well can the organization bounce back from setbacks?
So how prepared are they?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Organizations with strong business resilience, they can anticipate those disruptions.
Right.
Develop plans.
Right. And how does risk management fit into that?
Well, risk management is key to identifying vulnerabilities,
Okay.
assessing the potential impact of different things,
Right.
and then developing strategies to mitigate those things.
So it's kind of like strengthening those areas before they become problems.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so that's 6 areas. What's the final one? What's that last piece of the puzzle?
Okay, so the seventh and final area focuses on performance management.
Okay.
But this is not about employee performance reviews or anything like that.
Yeah.
This is about how risk management is actually influencing strategic decision making.
Got it.
So are they linking risk management to their KPIs to track progress, demonstrate return on investment,
Okay.
show how effective it is?
Right, yeah.
So it's about proving its value.
It's not just about avoiding bad things. It's about actually helping the company succeed.
Exactly.
Okay, wow. That's a lot. So we've unpacked these 7 areas. It's a way of understanding that risk management maturity.
Mm-hmm.
But how does technology fit into all of this?
That's a great question.
Can software actually help?
That's something that Granite addresses directly. They highlight the role of software in enhancing risk management maturity, but they also emphasize that software is not a magic bullet.
Right. So it's not going to fix everything overnight.
Right. You still need a strong risk management culture to make it work.
Okay, so what does that look like, the strong risk management culture?
Well, it all starts with leadership commitment.
Okay.
Leaders have to champion risk management, encourage people to talk about it openly, create that accountability.
So it's really setting the tone from the top.
Exactly. Yeah. And when people feel empowered to identify and address risks, that's when you start to see real change.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's a combination of the right tools and the right culture, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot, right? We've defined risk management, looked at the different approaches, unpacked the maturity model, even talk about the role of software.
Sure.
But I guess the most important question for our listeners is,
where do you stand on that maturity scale?
thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time.